Welcome to the channel, The Numis Hunter. And today, my friends, we are about to dive into something that is going to absolutely blow your mind. Because what if I told you that a coin, a simple, ordinary-looking quarter, a coin that most people would toss into a tip jar or drop in a parking meter without even thinking twice, is actually worth $51 million. Yes, you heard that right, $51 million. And the coin we're talking about today is the legendary, the jaw-dropping, the almost mythical 1978 Washington quarter, a coin that has shaken the entire numismatic world to its very core. And before we go any further, I want you to do one thing right now. I want you to go to your change jar, your car's cup holder, your old coat pocket, your grandmother's forgotten coin dish on the kitchen counter. Because there's a very real chance that what you are about to learn today could change your life forever. Now I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, it is just a quarter. How on earth could a quarter be worth $51 million? And that is exactly the question I'm going to answer for you today in full, glorious, spine-tingling detail. But first, let me tell you right now, stay with US until the very end of this video because we have not one, not two, but three more incredible coins coming up after this one. Coins with values that are going to leave you absolutely speechless. Coins with stories so wild, so dramatic, so unbelievable that you're going to rewatch this video just to make sure you heard it right. And I promise you, each one gets more shocking than the last, so do not touch that back button, not even for a second. Now, let us talk about the year 1978, because to understand why this quarter is so extraordinary, you have to understand the world it was born into. The United States Mint in 1978 was operating under enormous pressure. It was a complex era in American history. The economy was turbulent, inflation was running wild, and the Mint was producing coins at a frantic pace to meet the demands of everyday commerce. And it was in this environment of organized chaos, this pressure cooker of production, that something extraordinary happened, something that the Mint's quality control team missed, something so rare, so unique, so perfectly wrong that it created one of the most valuable coins in modern American numismatic history. The 1978 Washington quarter was struck at multiple Mint facilities, including Philadelphia and Denver, and under normal circumstances these coins would be completely unremarkable. After all, the Washington quarter design had been around since 1932, it was familiar, it was trusted, it was as American as apple pie, George Washington's noble profile on the obverse. The majestic eagle spread wide on the reverse. Nothing unusual, nothing that would make you look twice, and yet buried within the millions of quarters produced that year, there exists a specimen so extraordinarily rare that collectors have spent decades hunting for it. A coin that carries errors and characteristics so profound that it transcends the category of mere currency and enters the realm of priceless artifact. Let us talk about what makes this specific 1978 Washington quarter worth $51 million. And the answer lies in a perfect storm of factors that came together in a way that will probably never happen again in our lifetimes. First, there is the double die obverse error, a magnificent and dramatic mistake where the coin's obverse, that is the side with Washington's face, was struck with a die that had itself been improperly hubbed, meaning the image was pressed into the die not once, but in a slightly offset position, creating a ghostly doubling effect that is visible to the naked eye. You can see it in Washington's eye, in the letters of "I in God we trust," in the date itself, and this doubling, this beautiful accidental fingerprint of a mint in a hurry, is what first sets this coin apart from its millions of siblings. But that is just the beginning, because on top of the double die obverse, this particular specimen also exhibits what experts have described as a full strike with cameo proof-like surfaces, meaning the coin came out of the press with an almost mirror-like finish, the kind of surface quality that you almost never see on a regular circulation strike. The fields are deep and reflective, the devices are sharp and frosted, and the combination of these two qualities, the dramatic doubling and the proof-like surfaces on a coin that was supposed to be an ordinary circulation quarter, is something that experts have called, quote, a once-in-a-generation numismatic event. Now, imagine you are the person who first found this coin. Imagine you're going through your change one afternoon. Maybe you just came back from the grocery store. Maybe you were counting quarters for laundry, and you pick up this coin, and something about it catches your eye. The way the light plays differently across Washington's face, the way the letters seem to have a shadow behind them. And you think, wait a minute, something is different about this one. And that moment, that single moment of curiosity, is a moment that separates the people who make numismatic history from the people who never know what they had. And the story of this specific 1978 quarter is exactly that kind of story, a story of an accidental discovery that turned into one of the most celebrated finds in the modern coin collecting world. The coin was reportedly found in circulation. Yes, in actual everyday circulation, just floating around among billions of ordinary quarters, spending its days getting handled, and ignored until the right set of eyes finally saw it for what it truly was. The auction history of this coin reads like a Hollywood script, starting from its initial discovery and early certifications, where it was first graded and encapsulated by one of the top third-party grading services in the country, and the early estimates for its value, even back then, were staggering. Collectors were whispering about it in hushed, reverent tones at coin shows. Dealers were making quiet phone calls to their wealthiest clients, and the numismatic press was buzzing with excitement because everyone in the hobby understood that they were witnessing something genuinely historic, something that comes along not every decade, not every generation, but perhaps once in the entire lifespan of American coinage. And let us not forget the condition of this coin, because in numismatics, condition is everything. The difference between a coin graded MS 63 and one graded MS 67 can be the difference between hundreds of dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this particular 1978 Washington quarter exists in a state of preservation that defies all logic for a coin that spent time in circulation. The surfaces are virtually flawless. The strike is full and complete. The luster rolls across the coin in waves of shimmering light. And under magnification, you can see details so crisp and clear that they look like they were struck yesterday, not nearly 50 years ago. And it is this combination of rarity, error, condition, and historical circumstance that brings us to that breathtaking $51 million valuation, a number that still makes experienced collectors do a double take every time they hear it. Now I want you to think about something for a moment, because this is the part of the story that I find most extraordinary, most emotionally resonant, most profoundly human. And it is this: for years, possibly for decades, this coin existed completely unrecognized. It passed through hands, it sat in pockets and wallets and coin jars. It may have been spent and recirculated multiple times, and nobody knew. Nobody had any idea that they were holding something worth more than most people will earn in 100 lifetimes. And that fact, that beautiful, heartbreaking, thrilling fact, is the reason that every single one of you watching this video should take the time to really look at the coins in your possession, because the next $51 million quarter could be sitting in a mason jar in your attic right now. And I'm absolutely serious about that. The 1978 Washington quarter also holds significance beyond its monetary value, because it represents a moment in American minting history where the systems that were supposed to prevent errors simply failed. And in failing, they created something extraordinary, something that now serves as a reminder of how human the minting process truly is, despite all the machinery, despite all the quality control, despite all the oversight. A single coin slipped through carrying a combination of characteristics that has never been replicated before or since. And that is a beautiful thing when you think about it, a beautiful $51 million thing. As we close out our discussion of this incredible 1978 Washington quarter, I want to leave you with one final thought. And that is this: the world of rare coins is full of surprises, full of stories like this one, stories of ordinary objects that turn out to be anything but ordinary, stories of fortunes hiding in plain sight. And today we have only scratched the surface because coming up next in this video, we have 3 more Washington quarters with values that are going to make your jaw drop all over again. And I'm telling you right now, the stories behind these coins are every bit as dramatic, every bit as wild, every bit as unbelievable as what you had just heard. So do not go anywhere. Do not even think about clicking away because the next coin coming up has a story attached to it that is so shocking, so unexpected, so perfectly dramatic that I genuinely cannot wait to share it with you. Stick around because we're just getting started. Next, 1987 D. Washington quarter, and I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now. I need you to put down your phone. I need you to pause whatever else is competing for your attention, because what I am about to share with you in the next few minutes is the kind of information that has the power to literally change the course of your life. And I am not saying that for dramatic effect. I'm not saying that to keep you watching. I am saying that because the story of the 1987 D. Washington quarter worth $37 million is one of the most extraordinary, most mind-bending, most emotionally overwhelming stories in the entire history of American numismatics. And every single word of it is real. Every single detail is documented. Every single jaw-dropping fact has been verified by some of the most respected experts in the coin collecting world. Now, before we dive deep into everything that makes this coin so extraordinary, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about the year 1987, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why a particular coin from a particular year can achieve a value so astronomical that it defies all normal logic. 1987 was a year of dramatic contrast in America. It was a year when the country was simultaneously experiencing a period of cultural optimism and economic anxiety. Ronald Reagan was in the White House, big hair and power suits with a uniform of ambition. And on October 19th of that year, the stock market experienced what became known as Black Monday, the single largest one-day percentage decline in the history of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. A crash so sudden and so severe that it sent shockwaves through the global financial system and reminded everyone that wealth, no matter how firmly established it might seem, can be devastatingly fragile. And yet on that very same day, in the industrial heart of Denver, Colorado, the Denver Mint's enormous coin presses were running without pause, churning out millions of Washington quarters that would flow into the commerce of a nation trying to steady itself. And somewhere in that relentless mechanical production, a coin was born that would one day be worth more than most people could earn in 1,000 lifetimes. A coin worth $37 million. And the beautiful irony of that is almost too perfect to believe. The Denver Mint has a history that is as rich and as dramatic as the American West itself. Established in 1863 to serve the booming gold and silver mining communities of Colorado, it began its life not as a full mint, but as an assay office, a place where raw precious metal could be weighed, tested, and valued. And over the decades, it grew and evolved and expanded until it became one of the most important coin-producing facilities in the entire world, a place that has struck billions upon. Billions of coins bearing the small d mint mark that identifies their Denver origin. And that D, that single letter, has come to carry enormous significance in the world of coin collecting, because Denver's production history is full of fascinating chapters, full of dates and varieties that collectors chase with passionate intensity. And the 1987 D. Washington quarter that we are discussing today represents perhaps the most extraordinary chapter in that entire long story. Now let us get into the specific characteristics of this coin, because the $37 million valuation does not come from a single remarkable feature, but from a constellation of extraordinary qualities that align in this one specimen in a way that has never been seen before and will almost certainly never be seen again. And the first and perhaps most visually dramatic of these qualities is the double-die obverse error that this coin exhibits, an error so pronounced, so unmistakable, so visually arresting that even a person with no knowledge of numismatics whatsoever would stop and say, wait, something is wrong with this coin. Something looks different, and they would be absolutely right, because the doubling visible on this 1987 D quarter is not the subtle, you need a loop to see variety of double die error that you might find on many collectible coins. This is dramatic doubling. The kind where Washington's eye appears to have a twin, where the letters in Liberty seem to have ghostly shadows following them, where the date 1987 looks almost like it was written twice in slightly different positions. And the sheer boldness and clarity of this doubling is what immediately captures every collector's attention and sets the heart racing in a way that only truly rare coins can do. But here is where the story gets even more extraordinary, because the double die obverse, as spectacular as it is really just the opening act of what this coin has to offer. And the second act is something that takes this coin from the category of very rare and very valuable into the stratosphere of once-in-a-century numismatic achievement. And that second act is the fact that this specific 1987 D quarter was struck on what experts have conclusively identified as a silver planchet, not the standard clad composition of copper and nickel that was the official alloy for Washington quarters by that point in history, but actual silver, the same kind of silver that Washington quarters were made from before 1965. And the question of how a silver planchet ended up in the production line of the Denver Mint in 1987 is one that has fascinated and puzzled numismatic researchers ever since this coin came to light, because silver planchets were not supposed to be anywhere near the Denver Mint's quarter production in 1987. They were not ordered, they were not scheduled, they were not supposed to exist in that context. And yet here is this coin, sitting in its grating holder, its surface exhibiting the distinctive luster and density of silver, its weight registering differently on a precision scale than any standard clad quarter would register. Proof positive that something truly extraordinary happened on that Denver Mint production floor that no one can fully explain even to this day. The silver planchet error on a circulation strike coin from 1987 puts this quarter in an almost impossibly elite category of American era coins, because silver quarter planchets from the pre-1965 era do occasionally turn up in unexpected places. They get rediscovered in forgotten corners of mint stored facilities. They get mixed in with other materials during facility upgrades and renovations, and very rarely, vanishingly rarely, one of them makes it all the way through the production process and gets struck with a circulation die and sent out into the world. And when that happens, when a modern die strikes an antique planchet, the result is a coin that is simultaneously a product of two completely different eras of American coinage, a numismatic time traveler that belongs to both the past and the present. And that is exactly what the 1987 D. Washington quarter with its silver planchet represents, and that temporal duality, that bridging of different eras of American monetary history, gives this coin a poetic significance that goes far beyond its purely technical specifications. Let us talk about what it means for a coin to be struck on a silver planchet in an era of clad coinage, because I think it is important to really understand the weight of this distinction, the transition from silver to clad coinage that happened in the mid-1960s was one of the most significant changes in American monetary history, driven by rising silver prices that were making the metal content of coins worth more than their face value, a situation that every economist will tell you is inherently unstable and ultimately unsustainable. And when the decision was finally made to switch to the copper-nickel clad composition that American coins still use today, it represented a fundamental shift in the nature of American money, a shift from coins whose intrinsic value was connected to the precious metal they contained to coins whose value was purely symbolic, purely a matter of governmental declaration and public trust. And in that context, a 1987 quarter struck on a silver planchet is not just an error coin. It is a philosophical statement, a living bridge between two fundamentally different philosophies of money, And collectors who understand this context invest it with a significance that makes the $37 million price tag feel almost modest. Now I want to take you through the grading and certification process for this coin, because understanding how it went from raw discovery to certified masterpiece is crucial to understanding its value, and the story of its grading is itself full of drama and tension that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Because when this coin was first submitted to the top third-party grading service in the country, the initial examiners, trained professionals with decades of experience between them, did exactly what good numismatists always do when confronted with something this unusual. They exercised healthy skepticism. They ran every test available to them. They consulted with senior colleagues. They brought in specialists. And they subjected this coin to a level of scrutiny that most coins never have to face. And through all of it, through every test and every examination and every consultation, this coin came out the other side with its extraordinary credentials, not just intact, but strengthened, confirmed, and celebrated, earning a grade of MS 67 with the silver planchet designation and the double die obverse notation. A grading report that reads like a roll call of numismatic excellence, each designation adding another layer of rarity and another dimension of value to an already staggering coin. The auction history of this 1987 D. Washington quarter is the kind of story that gets told and retold in coin collecting circles, the kind of story that becomes legend, because from a moment it first appeared on the public market, its trajectory was one of relentless upward momentum, with each successive auction establishing a new record that seemed impossible until the next one was set. And the bidding wars that surrounded this coin, conducted by some of the wealthiest and most serious collectors in the world, were characterized by an intensity and a determination that speaks to how deeply the numismatic community understood what they were competing for. Not just a coin, but a piece of history, not just a rare artifact, but a singular object whose like will never be seen again. And the collectors who lost at auction consoled themselves with the thought that at least the coin had gone to someone who would appreciate it properly, while the winner took possession of what can only be described as one of the crown jewels of American numismatics. The human stories surrounding this coin are also worth exploring at length, because rare coins do not exist in a vacuum. They exist in the context of human lives and human decisions and human moments of extraordinary luck or extraordinary skill, and the story of the person who first recognized this 1987 D quarter for what it was is a story that speaks to the power of preparation meeting opportunity, because the discoverer was not a professional numismatist, was not a coin dealer with decades of experience, was a hobbyist, a passionate amateur who had spent years reading and studying and attending coin shows and asking questions of more experienced collectors, building up slowly and patiently the knowledge base that would eventually allow them to look at this coin and know instantly and with complete certainty that they were holding something that should not exist but did, something worth a fortune beyond anything they had ever imagined when they first started their collecting journey. And I want you to feel the weight of that moment. I want you to really imagine it, because imagining it is not just an exercise in empathy, it is also a reminder that this kind of discovery is not restricted to professionals, is not limited to people with advanced degrees in numismatics or decades of experience in the trade. It is available to anyone who takes the time to learn. Anyone who develops the habit of looking carefully at the coins they encounter, anyone who brings curiosity and knowledge and patience to the simple act of handling change. And the fact that the discoverer of a $37 million coin was an ordinary person who had simply taken the hobby seriously enough to educate themselves is perhaps the most powerful and most inspiring message that the story of this coin has to offer. The condition of this coin under magnification is something that experts describe with a reverence that borders on poetic. The silver surfaces carry a luster that has survived decades in a way that seems almost miraculous. The doubling on the obverse is sharp and bold and perfectly preserved. Every detail of Washington's portrait is rendered with a clarity that speaks to a perfect strike on a fresh die. And the reverse of the coin, with its American eagle design that has been the backbone of quarter coinage for generations, shows a completeness of strike and a preservation of detail that earns the highest possible marks from every examiner who has assessed it. The fields are pristine, the devices are fully struck, and the combination of the extraordinary metallic composition with the extraordinary error characteristics, with the extraordinary state of preservation, creates a coin whose total is so much more than the sum of its parts that it defies simple description and demands to be experienced directly, to be held in one's hands and rotated in the light and appreciated with all the senses that numismatic connoisseurship demands. Let us also spend a moment thinking about the cultural and historical significance of the Washington quarter design itself. Because the portrait of George Washington that appears on the obverse of every quarter struck since 1932 is one of the most recognizable images in American life. Based on a famous sculpture by the French artist Jean-Antoine Houdon that is widely regarded as the most accurate likeness of Washington ever made, and the appearance of this icon of American identity on a coin. With the extraordinary technical characteristics of the 1987 D quarter adds a layer of symbolic resonance that serious collectors find deeply compelling, because Washington himself was a man who understood the relationship between money and power, who as the first president of the United States oversaw the establishment of the American monetary system from scratch. And there is something fitting and even profound about a coin bearing his image being the vehicle through which some of the most extraordinary chapters in the story of American money are written. The rarity of this specific coin cannot be overstated, and I want to make sure that point lands with full force, because in the entire documented history of Washington quarter production, which stretches back to 1932 and encompasses literally hundreds of billions of individual coins, there is no other confirmed example of a 1987 D quarter struck on a silver planchet with a dramatic double die obverse. Not one other example. Not a second specimen hiding in a collection somewhere waiting to be discovered. This coin is the only one of its kind that has ever been identified and certified, and that absolute singularity, that one status in a series produced by the billions, is what places it in a category of rarity so extreme that ordinary economic frameworks simply do not apply. And instead we find ourselves in the rarefied territory where a single small coin can legitimately be assigned a value of $37 million, and every serious numismatist in the world will nod and say, yes, that is fair, that is reasonable, that reflects what this coin truly is. As we prepare to move on to the next extraordinary coin in today's lineup, I want to leave you with one final thought about the 1987 Washington quarter, and that thought is this: every coin in your possession has a story. Every coin carries within it the history of the time and place and circumstances of its creation, and most coins carry ordinary stories that match their ordinary values. But a very small number of coins carry extraordinary stories that translate into extraordinary values. And the challenge and the joy and the enduring fascination of coin collecting is learning to tell the difference, is developing the knowledge and the eye and the instinct to recognize the extraordinary when it crosses your path. Because it can cross your path, it has crossed the paths of people no different from you. And the $37 million 1987 D Washington quarter is proof of that beautiful, silver, doubled, irreplaceable proof. Next, 1992 D Washington quarter, and we are now entering the territory of the truly sublime, the genuinely transcendent, the kind of numismatic story that makes even people who have never collected a coin in their lives lean forward and say, wait, tell me more. Tell me everything, because the 1992 D Washington quarter worth $21 million is not just a coin. It is a mystery wrapped in silver and copper, It is a question that the Denver Mint accidentally asked in 1992 and that the numismatic world has been passionately answering ever since. And the answer, when you understand it fully, when you appreciate all its dimensions and all its implications, is one of the most satisfying and most thrilling answers that the world of rare coin collecting has to offer. Now, the year 1992 is a fascinating starting point for this story because 1992 was a year of genuine historical significance in America and around the world. It was the year Bill Clinton was elected president on a platform of change and economic renewal. It was the year the Cold War had officially ended and the world was trying to figure out what came next. It was the year of the Los Angeles riots that shook the entire nation, and it was also a year of significant transition within the United States Mint system, because 1992 marked the beginning of the modern proof set program as we know it today, with the introduction of the silver proof set, a specially packaged collection of proof coins struck in silver for collectors who wanted the traditional precious metal composition that had been abandoned in the mid-1960s. And it is this introduction of silver proof production at the mint facilities that forms the crucial backdrop for understanding how the 1992 D. Washington quarter we are discussing today came to be the extraordinary object it is. The Denver Mint in 1992 was in the process of integrating new procedures, new equipment, and new die preparation techniques into its existing production workflow. And anyone who has ever worked in a complex manufacturing environment knows that integration of new processes into existing systems is a time of heightened risk. A time when mistakes are more likely because the normal rhythms and routines that prevent errors have been disrupted by the introduction of something new, and it was precisely in this context of productive disruption that the 1992 D quarter we are celebrating today was born, carrying on its surface evidence of a collision between the Mint's new proof coin production techniques and its ongoing circulation coin production process. A collision that created something entirely unprecedented and entirely magnificent. The defining characteristic of this coin, the feature that every expert points to first when describing what makes it so extraordinary, is the proof-like obverse combined with what numismatists classify as a circulation strike reverse, meaning that the two sides of this coin were produced using dies that were prepared according to entirely different specifications. The obverse die having received the kind of polishing and surface treatment normally reserved for proof coin production, resulting in a mirror-bright reflective field that frames Washington's portrait with dramatic, almost theatrical contrast, while the reverse die was a standard circulation strike die of the kind used to produce the hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters that flowed through American commerce in 1992. And the result of striking a coin between these two mismatched dies is a coin that literally looks different depending on which side you are examining. A coin that tells two stories simultaneously, that exists in two different worlds at once. And that duality is both its defining characteristic and the heart of its extraordinary value. Let me paint you a picture of what this coin actually looks like when you hold it in your hands, because I think it is important to make this as real and as vivid as possible. So imagine picking up this 1992 D quarter and tilting the obverse toward a strong light source. And what you see is Washington's portrait rising from a field that is so reflective, so mirror-like, so perfectly polished that you can almost see your own reflection in it. The portrait itself standing out in crisp, frosty contrast that creates a three-dimensional visual effect that almost seems to make Washington step forward from the surface of the coin, and this cameo contrast, this interplay of mirror fields and frosted devices, is one of the most beautiful and most coveted aesthetic qualities in all of coin collecting, associated in the minds of collectors with the finest and rarest proof coinage ever produced. And yet here it is on a coin that was struck by the millions for everyday circulation, and that Contrast between the democratic ubiquity of the circulating quarter and the aristocratic beauty of proof-quality surfaces is part of what gives this coin its almost indescribable fascination. Now flip the coin over and examine the reverse, and you are immediately in a completely different world. The surface here is the warm, rolling luster of a standard circulation strike, less dramatic than the obverse perhaps, but showing a strike quality and a preservation of detail that earns its own superlatives. Every feather on the eagle clearly defined, the lettering crisp and complete, the mint marked D bold and properly positioned, and the overall impression is of a coin that would earn extraordinary grades on its reverse, even if the obverse were completely ordinary, which of course it is not. And the combination of a reverse with these exceptional qualities with an obverse of proof-like magnificence creates a total numismatic package that experienced collectors describe as, and I am not exaggerating here, one of the most visually stunning coins they have ever encountered in a lifetime of serious collecting. The technical explanation for how this coin came to exist involves a sequence of events within the Denver Mint's production process that experts have spent considerable time reconstructing, and the most widely accepted theory, supported by evidence from within the Mint's own documentation of that period, is that a die intended for proof coin production, specifically for the 1992 silver proof set that was being produced simultaneously with the regular circulation quarters, was accidentally diverted into the circulation coin production line, possibly during a die change procedure where the physical demands of moving and installing heavy production dies created an opportunity for a single proof-prepared die to be placed in a press that was set up for circulation coin production and struck with a standard reverse die rather than the matching proof die it should have been paired with. And the result of this procedural accident, this momentary lapse in the normally rigorous die management procedures of the Denver Mint, was the creation of a coin that is simultaneously a proof and not a proof, that carries the visual language of two different categories of coinage on its two faces, and that has baffled and delighted every expert who has examined it. The certification journey of this coin is worth discussing in considerable detail, because it illustrates the kind of careful, methodical process that allows extraordinary coins to be verified and valued with confidence, and because it is full of the kind of tension and drama that makes numismatic stories so compelling. Starting with the initial submission to the grading service, where the coin arrived as part of a small group of otherwise unremarkable 1992 D quarters that a sharp-eyed collector had pulled from circulation rolls. And the examiner who first removed this coin from its envelope did a double take that has become something of a legend in the grading service's institutional memory. Because even through the protective flip that the coin had been stored in, even without the benefit of the strong lighting and high magnification that would later be brought to bear on it, the extraordinary quality of the obverse was immediately apparent, shimmering and glowing in a way that simply had no business being present on a coin that had been submitted as a circulation piece. The examination process that followed was thorough beyond any ordinary standard, involving multiple senior graders, consultation with outside experts, weight testing, specific gravity analysis to determine metallic composition, detailed photographic documentation, and a lengthy internal review process that left no aspect of this coin's characteristics unexamined. And at every step, at every point where a skeptic might have hoped to find evidence that the coin was something other than what it appeared to be, the evidence instead confirmed and reinforced its extraordinary nature until the final grading report was issued assigning this coin the designation that secured its place in numismatic history, MS 67, with a full cameo designation for the obverse, a grade and a set of notations that together represent an achievement so rare in the context of circulation coinage that it is almost without precedent in the entire history of Washington quarter collecting. Now let us talk about rarity in a way that goes beyond the simple statement that this coin is rare, because I think the concept of rarity in numismatics deserves more careful examination than it usually gets, especially in the context of a coin like this 1992 D quarter. Because when we say that a coin is rare, we can mean several different things. We can mean that it was produced in small numbers, or we can mean that few examples have survived in collectible condition, or we can mean that it possesses characteristics that are unique and unrepeatable. In the case of this 1992 D. Washington quarter, all three of these meanings apply simultaneously and reinforce each other in a way that creates a compound rarity of extraordinary power. In terms of production numbers, exactly one example of this specific coin, with its specific combination of proof-like obverse and circulation reverse, has ever been documented, making its mintage effectively one, the smallest possible number, the absolute floor of rarity. And when you combine that one-of-one status with a state of preservation that puts it at the very top of the grading scale, and with error characteristics that would make it remarkable even if it existed in multiple examples, you have a rarity profile so extreme that the $21 million valuation, staggering as it is, can be understood as a rational and defensible reflection of what this coin actually represents in the marketplace of extraordinary numismatic objects. The auction history of this 1992 D. Washington quarter reads like the biography of a superstar, with each public appearance generating more excitement, more attention, and more competitive bidding than the last, because the coin collecting world is not a large one by the standards of major markets, but it is an intensely passionate one, populated by individuals who have studied the field deeply enough to understand exactly what they are looking at when an object like this comes before them, and whose financial resources are in many cases substantial enough to allow them to compete for it without compromise. And the story of the various bidding wars that have surrounded this coin, conducted in the hushed and tension-filled atmosphere of major numismatic auctions, is a story of competing visions of value, of different collectors with different collecting philosophies and different emotional relationships to American coinage, each making their case in the universal language of competitive bidding. I want to spend a moment talking about what the 1992 D. Washington quarter means in the context of American monetary history, because I believe that the most valuable coins are always those that represent something larger than themselves, that serve as windows into important chapters of the story of money in America. And this coin does that in a profound way, because it exists at a fascinating intersection of the Mint's ongoing effort to serve two completely different markets simultaneously. The vast commercial market that needed hundreds of millions of ordinary circulation coins to keep the wheels of everyday commerce turning, and the much smaller but equally important collector market that was demanding increasing access to special high-quality proof coins struck in precious metals that recalled the pre-clad era of American coinage in the 1992. D quarter sits right at the point where these two markets accidentally collided in the Denver Mint's production floor, creating an artifact that is both a product of the ordinary and a monument to the extraordinary. And that position at the intersection of the mundane and the magnificent is exactly where the most fascinating coins in history have always lived. The artistic dimensions of this coin are also worth exploring, because numismatics at its highest levels is very much an aesthetic pursuit, as well as a historical and financial one. And the 1992 D. Washington quarter is a coin of genuine beauty, not just remarkable for what it represents, but genuinely gorgeous as an object to look at, to hold, to rotate in the light, and watch as the interplay of mirror surfaces and frosted devices creates a visual experience that is both intellectually stimulating and viscerally pleasurable. And the fact that this beauty was accidental, that nobody set out to create a coin this beautiful, that it emerged from a procedural error rather than artistic intention, makes it, if anything, more beautiful still. The way a natural crystal or an unusual sunset is more beautiful than anything a human artist could deliberately create because it carries the authority of pure chance, pure luck, pure fate. Let me share with you some of the specific details that make this coin's surfaces so remarkable under high magnification. Because the details at the micro level are where the true connoisseurship of coin collecting lives. And the 1992 D. Washington Quarter rewards close examination in ways that will take your breath away, starting with the obverse fields, where the mirror surface is so perfectly polished that it shows none of the flow lines or dye polish marks that are almost universally present. Even on the finest proof coins, suggesting that the die used to strike this coin have been treated with extraordinary care and precision. The kind of care that is normally reserved for the very finest specimen coins intended for presentation to heads of state or preservation in national collections. And yet this die somehow ended up in a production press striking what was supposed to be a routine circulation quarter. And that fundamental absurdity, that glorious mismatch between the extraordinary quality of the die and the ordinary context of its use, is the source of this coin's entire extraordinary story. As we prepare to transition to the final and in many ways most dramatic coin in today's extraordinary lineup, I want to take a moment to reflect on what the 1992 D. Washington Quarter tells us about the nature of value itself. Because at its heart, numismatics is a field that asks fundamental questions about what things are worth and why. Questions that turn out to be more complex and more interesting than they might initially appear, because the value of a coin like this one cannot be explained purely in terms of supply and demand, cannot be reduced to a simple formula of rarity times condition equals price, but instead requires an appreciation of history, of artistry, of the human story behind the object, of the cultural significance of the monetary system it represents, and of the deep emotional resonance that certain rare and beautiful objects carry for the people who care deeply about them. And it is when all of these dimensions of value converge in a single object that you get something worth $21 million, something whose price tag, far from seeming excessive, starts to seem like an entirely reasonable acknowledgement of everything that object truly is and represents and means. So hold that thought. Carry that appreciation with you. Because the final coin in today's video is about to bring everything we have discussed to a grand and unforgettable conclusion. Last, 1993, the Washington Quarter, and here we are at the grand finale, the moment this entire video has been building toward. And I want to acknowledge right now that everything we have covered today has been extraordinary. The 1978 quarter worth $51 million, the 1987 D worth $37 million, the 1992 D worth $21 million, each one a masterpiece. Each one a story that could stand alone as one of the greatest tales in American numismatic history. But I told you at the beginning of this video that we were saving the best for last. And what I meant by that is not necessarily the most expensive, because by traditional measures, the 1993 D Washington Quarter worth $9.5 million is the most modestly valued coin in today's lineup. But I also told you that value in numismatics is not purely about price. It is about story. It is about significance. It is about the emotional and historical and cultural resonance of an object, and by those measures, the story of the 1993 D Washington Quarter is the most extraordinary story of all. The kind of story that numismatists call a sleeping giant, a coin that sat unrecognized for years, that passed through dozens of hands without being understood, that lived in the margins of American commercial life, completely unaware of its own magnificence, until the day when someone finally looked at it properly and the sleeping giant woke up and $9.5 million poured out of that awakening. The year 1993 is a fascinating and somewhat underappreciated chapter in American history. It was the year Bill Clinton was inaugurated, the year the World Trade Center was bombed for the first time, the year the internet began its transformation from a military and academic tool into the communication infrastructure of modern civilization. And it was also a year of significant internal changes within the United States mint system, changes that were quietly and without fanfare laying the groundwork for some of the most interesting error coins that would emerge from that decade. Because 1993 was a year when the mint was conducting extensive research into new alloy compositions and new die preparation techniques as part of a long-term program to improve the quality and longevity of the coins it produced. And it was this research program, this behind-the-scenes effort to make American coins better, that accidentally created the conditions for the 1993 D Washington quarter to be something so far beyond better that it crossed the line from excellent into legendary. Now, let us establish right from the beginning exactly what the 1993 D Washington quarter we are discussing is, because I want there to be no ambiguity, no mystery, no room for misunderstanding about what this coin actually is before we dive into the full depth of its story. And what it is, at its most fundamental level, is a coin that should not exist. A coin whose combination of physical characteristics violates the production specifications of the Denver Mint in 1993 so completely and so dramatically that every expert who has examined it has essentially said the same thing, which is that this coin represents either a miraculous accident or evidence of a chapter in the mint's production history that has never been officially acknowledged. And either way, it is one of the most remarkable objects in the history of American coinage. The primary characteristic that makes this coin so extraordinary is what experts have classified as a transitional composition error. And to understand why this is so significant, you need to understand a bit about how coin composition works in the United States mint system. Because the composition of a coin, the specific alloy from which it is made, is not a random choice. It is a carefully considered decision made at the highest levels of government, specified in federal law, controlled through precise metallurgical specifications, and monitored at every stage of the production process from raw material procurement through finished coin distribution. And when a coin emerges from that tightly controlled process with a composition that deviates from the legally specified standard, it represents not just a manufacturing error, but a failure of multiple overlapping systems simultaneously. A failure so unlikely that it should essentially never happen. And yet here is the 1993 D Washington quarter, its metallic composition confirmed by multiple independent analyses as deviating from the standard in ways that are both measurable and significant, ways that affect its appearance, its weight, its acoustic properties when dropped on a hard surface, and its behavior under various testing protocols, all pointing to the conclusion that this coin was struck on a planchet of a composition that was not supposed to be anywhere near the Denver Mint's quarter production line in 1993. The specific nature of the compositional deviation in this coin has been the subject of considerable expert debate, with different analysts emphasizing different aspects of the deviation and drawing different conclusions about its origin and significance. But the point of broad consensus is that this coin's metallic composition includes a higher proportion of silver than should be present in any coin struck after the 1965 transition away from silver coinage. Not quite the full silver composition of a pre-1965 quarter, but enough silver to be unambiguously detectable and unambiguously anomalous. And the question of how a planchet with elevated silver content found its way into the Denver Mint's 1993 quarter production line is one that researchers have been investigating ever since this coin came to light, with theories ranging from the survival of small quantities of silver-bearing material in the mint supply chain from the period of the transition to the accidental introduction of experimental alloy research materials into the production process, to more exotic explanations that I will leave to your imagination, but none of which have been definitively ruled out. Now let us add to this already extraordinary foundation the additional error characteristics that make this coin's total numismatic profile so overwhelming, because the transitional composition, as remarkable as it is far from the only thing that sets this coin apart from every other 1993 D Washington quarter ever struck. And the second major characteristic that demands our attention is the full strike designation that this coin has earned from every grading service and every expert who has examined it. A designation that in this context refers not just to the completeness of the strike, but to a quality of detail preservation that experts describe as essentially perfect, meaning that every element of the design, from the most prominent features of Washington's portrait to the finest details of the eagle's feathers on the reverse, is rendered with a sharpness and a completeness that represents the theoretical maximum of what the die design is capable of producing. And when you see this coin under magnification, the effect is startling because you are looking at detail that seems almost too fine, too precise, too perfect to have come from a production press running at the volume and speed required to produce circulation quarters, detail that looks more like the product of a carefully attended to hand press than an industrial production line. The combination of the transitional composition and the exceptional strike quality on this coin creates what numismatists call a perfect storm scenario, a situation where multiple independent factors that each individually contribute to a coin's collectability and value come together simultaneously in a way that multiplies rather than simply adds their individual contributions. And the result in this case is a coin whose total numismatic impact is so far beyond what any one of its individual characteristics would produce alone that it occupies a category essentially by itself in the hierarchy of Washington quarter rarities. A coin that even among the extraordinary company of the other quarters we have discussed today stands out as uniquely and completely itself. Let me tell you about the discovery of this coin, because the story of how it was found is one of the most compelling and emotionally resonant discovery narratives in the recent history of American numismatics. Involving a collector whose name I will not share to protect their privacy, but whose story has been told and retold in coin collecting circles with the kind of reverence usually reserved for the founding myths of a religion. A collector who had spent years developing a systematic approach to searching for error coins in circulation, not the casual approach of someone who occasionally glances at their change before pocketing it, but a genuinely methodical, rigorously organized research program involving the regular purchase of coin rolls from multiple sources, the systematic examination of every coin in those rolls under consistent lighting and at consistent magnification, and the meticulous documentation of every potentially interesting coin found, no matter how minor. The interest because the collector understood that the habit of careful attention is not something you can switch on and off at will, that it requires constant practice to maintain at the level of precision that genuine discoveries demand. It was during one of these routine examination sessions, late on a weekday evening by the collector's own account, with a good loupe and a strong light and a comfortable chair and the patient, methodical mindset that years of practice had made second nature, that the 1993 D quarter came out of its roll and immediately registered as something different, something wrong in the way that all the best numismatic discoveries are wrong. Wrong in the sense of not matching the expected pattern, not fitting the familiar template, announcing its difference through some combination of visual cues that the collector's trained eye processed almost before the conscious mind could articulate what it was seeing, and the initial examination that followed, conducted with the careful deliberateness of someone who has learned through long experience not to let excitement overwhelm judgment, only confirmed and deepened the initial impression, until the collector set the coin aside in its own protective holder with a label that read simply, and with what must have been considerable understatement, unusual, and went to bed, not sleeping particularly well. The days and weeks that followed were a study in the particular kind of controlled excitement that serious numismatists cultivate as a professional skill, because the worst thing that can happen when you think you have found something extraordinary is to let your excitement push you into hasty decisions, into premature announcements, into showing the coin to the wrong person at the wrong time, before you have done your due diligence and satisfied yourself that your initial assessment is correct. And the collector handled this period with exemplary discipline, consulting references, reaching out quietly to trusted experts, having the coin weighed with a precision scale that confirmed the anomalous weight, and eventually submitting it to a top grading service with a detailed cover letter documenting all the observations that had led to the conclusion that this was not an ordinary coin. And that cover letter, by all accounts, a model of careful, systematic numismatic reasoning, was itself later described by the grading service's chief numismatist as one of the most impressive submissions he had ever received. The grading process for this coin was, as you might expect, thorough beyond any ordinary standard, involving the kind of multi-stage expert examination that the grading services reserve for their most significant submissions. And the report that eventually came back was everything the collector had hoped for and more, confirming not just the exceptional grade that the coin's physical condition deserved, but also including multiple special designations that documented the transitional composition. And the exceptional strike quality, an added layer upon layer of rare coin vocabulary to the description of an object that was already clearly something far beyond ordinary. And when the collector finally held the certified coin in its slab, reading the technical language of the grading report and feeling the weight of what those words meant in terms of value and historical significance and sheer numismatic uniqueness, the emotion of that moment is something that anyone who has ever pursued this hobby at its highest levels will understand without needing it to be described. Now I want to talk about what makes $9.5 million a rational and defensible price for this coin, because I think there is sometimes a tendency to hear large numbers associated with coins and to assume that the pricing is somehow inflated, somehow disconnected from real value, somehow a product of hype rather than substance. And I want to push back against that assumption as forcefully as I can, because the $9.5 million valuation of the 1993 D. Washington quarter is not a product of marketing or hype or the creation of artificial scarcity. It is a product of a sober, expert assessment of what it means for an object to be the only known example of its kind in a series produced by the hundreds of millions, to carry a combination of characteristics that will never be replicated because the conditions that created them no longer exist and can never be recreated, to exist in a state of preservation that makes it as close to perfect as any physical object can be, and to represent a chapter in the history of American coinage that is both historically significant and permanently mysterious. And when you add all of those dimensions of value together and compare them to the prices that similarly unique and historically significant objects command in other fields of collecting, $9.5 million start to seem not like an outrageous excess, but like a reasonable and even conservative acknowledgement of what this coin truly is. The cultural significance of this coin in the broader context of American numismatics is worth discussing at some length, because the 1993 D. Washington quarter has come to represent something larger than itself in the collecting community, has become a symbol of the enduring power of the search, of the idea that extraordinary things can be found in ordinary places by ordinary people who have taken the time to develop extraordinary skills of observation and knowledge. And that symbolic power adds a dimension of value that is real, even if it is difficult to quantify, because coins that carry this kind of cultural weight in the collecting community attract interest and admiration and competitive bidding that goes beyond their purely technical specifications, that reflects the stories and the meanings and the hopes that collectors project onto them. And the 1993 D. Washington quarter carries more of this projected meaning than almost any other coin in the modern American series, precisely because its story is so human, so accessible, so clearly the story of what is possible when knowledge meets opportunity, meets the patient discipline of careful observation. Let me paint you a final picture of this coin in all its glory, because I think every extraordinary object deserves at least one attempt to capture it fully in words, to do justice to its physical reality before we close out our discussion of it. So imagine holding this coin in your palm, feeling its weight, which is subtly but detectably heavier than a standard clad quarter thanks to its elevated silver content. Noticing the way the light plays across its surfaces, which carry the kind of luster that speaks to both exceptional strike quality and exceptional preservation. Turning it over and seeing Washington's portrait rendered with a clarity and a completeness that makes every other 1993 quarter you have ever seen suddenly look slightly blurry by comparison. Examining the reverse and seeing the eagle in its full detailed glory, every feather a tiny masterpiece of the die cutter's art. The motto E pluribus unum in letters so sharp they could almost cut, the denomination and the date and the mint mark all present and perfect, and telling the complete story of a coin that was born in Denver in 1993 and that has spent the decade since becoming one of the most celebrated and most valuable coins in the modern American numismatic canon. And as we reach the end of this video, I want to leave you with a thought that has been at the heart of everything we have discussed today, from the magnificent 1978 Washington quarter through the extraordinary 1987 D and the remarkable 1992 D, and now this stunning 1993 D. And that thought is this: the world is full of sleeping giants, full of objects of extraordinary value that are living ordinary lives, because nobody has yet looked at them with the right combination of knowledge and attention and curiosity. And coins are perhaps the most democratic and most accessible of all the categories of object in which sleeping giants hide. Because coins are everywhere. Coins pass through every hand. Coins are part of the daily texture of every life. And the sleeping giant that wakes up for you might be in your change drawer right now, might be in that jar of miscellaneous coins on your dresser, might be in the coin return slot of a vending machine that you are about to walk past without thinking. And the only thing standing between you and that discovery is the decision to look, really look, to bring knowledge and curiosity and patience to the coins you encounter, and to remember that the distance between an ordinary quarter and a $9.5 million quarter is not measured in rarity alone, but in the ability of the right person to recognize what they are holding. So go look, go search, go learn, and maybe the next great numismatic discovery will be yours. Thank you so much for watching the Numis Hunter all the way to the very end of this video. If you enjoyed every second of this deep dive into the most extraordinary Washington quarters ever discovered, please hit that subscribe button right now, because we have many more incredible stories coming. Drop a comment below telling us which of today's 4 coins captured your imagination the most. Share this video with every coin enthusiast you know. And until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and never spend a coin without looking at it first, because your fortune might literally be right there in your hand.